Thank you very much indeed, Count Corla and Taoiseach. Our thoughts again with those who are ill in hospital or have lost loved ones to this pandemic, and it returns us to listening with respect carefully to medical and health advice at all times. Just reflecting back on this crisis, as I recall, maybe the first meeting some of our best experts on the health issue, if I recall rightly in discussing it with them, what they were saying is that it was not going to be possible for us to completely suppress the virus, that to completely remove it. They then said, and if I recall rightly, was not something that's going to be we could do alone as a country. That we did need to suppress it so that our health service wouldn't be overrun, but the complete eradication or guaranteeing that there would be no further waves was not something that, it seemed to me at the start, on the agenda. And while, thankfully, we are several months later, we have seen that our health system hasn't been overrun, it still seems clear to me that it's going to be difficult for us, particularly given what's happening in our neighbours and our border arrangements with our neighbours, to completely suppress or to remove completely is something that would be very, very difficult unless some other vaccine or other development evolves. We're in a different situation to countries like New Zealand or others, but even there, one wonders how they would manage to completely isolate the island to be able to stop any further recurrence of the virus. But we have to do everything we can to minimise and to manage and to suppress in a way that, until a virus hopefully does come, the loss of life and illness to our people is minimised. That's absolutely accepted. But it's clear too, the health advice must surely be and is that there's a wider understanding of the health issues at play, including the fact that maybe increases in other illnesses if people are not accessing health services in the way they traditionally would, but also the issue of our mental health and our well-being in the widest sense, which is a real issue. And the effects of unemployment and mental health are clear and certain, and I'm sure can be modelled in the same way that the modelling of the virus has been done. And particularly, I'd say, Taoiseach, from experience, when you get to a certain period of unemployment, first month or two you can manage, you get sensitive to questions, someone asks you what are you doing and you don't have an answer, but after a period, I would say 4, 5, 6 months, that sort of period, it really does become a very serious health issue, mental health issue. And that's why I say with respect that we have to have that wider health consideration on some of the timelines of the lifting of restrictions that are in play. And to take one example, and it's not prejudging this, and it has to be based on good health advice, the mix of health advice, the lifting of the fourth phase when we're going to allow our people to move around the country and in that way allow tourism, our own people staying on holidays in our own country, becomes a viable option, in my mind. If that took place slightly earlier, at the start of the month rather than the end of the month, it would have a significant bearing, in my belief, in the viability of the tourism industry into the next year, and also a very significant impact on the return of jobs across the country to cater for those domestic holidaymakers. And that would have a very significant mental health effect, boost in the employment generation that would come naturally from it, and the viability of that employment into the next year, because we had the tourism industry up and running. Even those 3 or 4 weeks earlier, it would make a huge difference. So first question, if I can, and it's not to kind of contradict NPHET or to kind of be seen to undermining it, but if we are to look at possible restriction on that date, where let's say it might move into phase 3 rather than phase 4, when might that be decided? When would you be sitting down with NPHET to work out those sort of arrangements? Because if it's only done at the very end, towards the end of June, well, it doesn't give people time to plan, it doesn't give businesses time to kind of set up and organise. So while you don't want to be contradicting or kind of prejudging or presuming or risking any health factors, it must be an issue that we do have to consider is what sort of signal, or when might we give a signal if such a slight change in the timelines was to put in place, so that those tens of thousands of jobs that might be returned, we could know now in advance that, yeah, that's likely what we might be able to do. What type of approach might apply, what type of timeline might apply to such a decision, if it is possible, on health grounds for us to make it?
As I've always said from the outset, this is a living plan, a plan that can be accelerated if we're getting on top of the virus and getting ahead of the virus. One thing we're going to stick with is the 3-week intervals. That is there for good epidemiological reasons. By the time, if you relax restrictions, by the time the virus spreads and incubates and gets tested for and all the rest of it, it's going to be at least 2 weeks before that shows up in your data. So we believe we should stick with the 3-week intervals. I know some people say WHO recommends 2, ECDC recommends 4. We've gone for 3. 3 makes sense because we need to know that if we ease restrictions, that they haven't caused the virus to take off again. And it really is the second after 2 weeks, really into the 3rd week before you can know that. So we'll stick with the 3-week windows, but we can bring things forward, as you suggest, from 5 to 4 or 4 to 3, as the case may be. So we have made proposals to the CMO and to NEFIT about bringing things forward from phase 4 into 3 and 3 into 2. And NEFIT is considering those proposals that government have made, and government will make a decision on that on Friday morning and inform the public of the decision on Friday afternoon.
Thank you. I look forward to that, hopefully to that announcement. The second example of looking forward and mental health issues and the well-being of our children, their education is critical to their health and future well-being and development. I read with interest John Boyle, the head of the Secretary General of the INTO, who I know well. I knew him as a teacher in a school that I used to have to represent. Brilliant teacher, leader of our teaching profession. And I was very glad he's saying absolutely our schools will be returning in August. But a lot of parents, I would say, are very confused or uncertain at the present time. He said in his article, he said, we'll still need guidance to support those plans. And what a lot of parents are reading at the moment is, oh, well, we'll be returning in August or late August, but it mightn't be all students. And they're scratching their heads thinking, how could that be possible? Like, will it be Monday, Tommy, Tuesday, Sean, and that guidance is needed. And I think it's needed for the health of all of our people, the families around the country, that a sense that that their children will be back and on track in August, September. So I don't know if Minister McHugh's in giving questions here today, maybe he'll have further details on it. But just to say, in terms of getting our people, giving the confidence that in how we're managing this, that guidance is needed very quickly, I believe, so that parents have some sense of understanding that, yeah, the return of their children to school, and indeed you could apply the same to our third level colleges. Even if the guidance is going to be towards some sort of, particularly in the colleges, more distant learning and so on, I don't know how that will work in a primary school classroom. As John Boyle says, how do we do that when we've 30 to a class? I don't know. But I think our people want and deserve a kind of an answer, that guidance very quickly, and not to wait until the latter part of the summer. To have some sense of that coming would be really important. And I believe there's just uncertainty at the moment in terms of how many pupils, how it will work. Is there any timeline for the issuing of that guidance that might help us get certainty in this whole area?
I think, as a deputy says, Minister McHugh might be more up to date on this than I am. Certainly, assuming the virus continues to go in the right direction, primary schools and secondary schools will open for all children, and they'll open at the beginning of the school year, which is the end of August. What we haven't worked out fully yet is the exact arrangements as to how that's going to happen, because things will have to change. There'll have to be, hand washing on the way in, for example, arrangements so that children don't congregate at entrances. And then obviously the classrooms will have to be reconfigured. But we do have the advantage of being able to learn from other countries in Europe that have opened their schools, and they do seem to have managed to do it. So it probably wouldn't be helpful for me to speculate about those arrangements, but they are being worked on and they will be in place well before schools are due to open in August.